Well, here we go. Greetings. Welcome once again to our happy hour jam. This is Art for Truth. We are Art for Truth. And we have here Thoughtful Thursday. So something I've been thinking about lately, a couple things. Actually, which leads to a fair few things. So, evolution. First of all, if I'm going to talk about evolution, we are still at a state of being where I have to address what evolution means. Evolution, because people get defensive about evolution. They think that it counters spirituality, that it counters God as the direct creator of us, and it doesn't. It just means that his methods are a little bit different, and his perception of time is a little bit different than we may have imagined. I don't like saying hate, and I don't like saying his with God. If there's any force, any essence, any creative power that exists in this omniverse, I would imagine it is essentially androgynous or omnisexual, which is to say everything and nothing. When it comes to that. So, if God is not inherently male because of its service to maledom, and God is not specifically female for the same reason, which is to say, God, the concept of, seems to be an idea that can exist without a sexual element. It's something from nothing, not something from two things. It makes sense that to me that God would be a non-sexual creator, and that the goddess, the essence of Mother Earth, Mother Life, that is as is perhaps the male god, the male equivalent, come down from the source, God, which would be both and neither. It works to have sexuality apparently in life. Kind of hard to imagine it without it. Well, no, it's not, but our life certainly has needed it every step of the way. I guess I say it's not because honestly the imagination is one thing that if you put yourself to it, everything makes sense. Everything. You can see everything. Everything. That's how powerful imagination is. You can see any Google number of possibilities that may never, ever happen in most perspectives of reality. You can see those with the imagination. It is a phenomenal power. And it helps us to imagine the creation of things without the designation of a god or goddess, without the designation of a particular sexual hierarchy or being. There is no patriarchy or matriarchy when the source is androgynous. So, with that being said, we have God and Goddess as well, because we have God. This episode this is not going where I intended, but we'll get back on track. So, let's say we have this power of creation out of nothing, okay? We have any number of energies and powers that come from that. God power, goddess power, sexual power on both sides. More that we're learning about. All matters, but essentially, there is power of something out of nothing. That happens, okay? So let's just say God, going back to this. And I'm going back to the androgynous God that doesn't have gender, doesn't have anything except existence, because it's the source, whatever it is, that willed creation from nothing, that's something from nothing, willed anything whatsoever to be. Perhaps even beyond that. Perhaps even that has a source. Maybe it's all about the source. But if we're going to talk about the perpetuation of life, that something exists at all, let alone something to perceive things, we need to look at evolution and what it means. So we have a force of creation that wills something from nothing. Within that, there's at least one small perception of it, one small portion of it, at the very least, that we are acutely aware of. Where some of the things that started to form from nothing, that came from that spark, that's something from nothing, swirled and twirled and worked their way into what we call life. And it didn't happen lickety-split, even though it did happen lickety-split, which is to say, it took billions, perhaps more years, perhaps universes we don't even know about before this happened or could happen. And there was a build-up. There needed to be the right set of circumstances. But when those circumstances met, whatever they were, it might as well have been, and I believe was, into an essence, a conscious decision for which a snap moment things changed. Consciousness doesn't necessarily mean a willful act or like total understanding. It means I think a connection to something from nothing. A connection to energy and the information within that energy, which is all possible information that comes from the creation of something from nothing. Not to mention, because it must therefore hitherto include the nothing from which the something comes and all the energy behind that. Perhaps, just perhaps, God is that principle. It's that principle of nature, which is, it is the will that makes something from nothing. Perhaps that would essentially make God the creator of everything, including the nothing from which something could come out of. It's, one of these infinity cycle things. Of course, it would have to be, but yet, cycles. If we look at our infinity symbol, okay, there are parts of it, okay, that have a space like this much away from each other or form a curved line. There are other parts of it that make an X or a cross, For us to describe infinity in that way, rather than just use the perfect circle or whatnot, would imply that within that infinity there are different stages and relationships. You could take that infinity symbol, and you can hook it up with other infinities in different dimensions, like a tesseract of infinity. And then you'll see that there's multiple infinities within infinity. In an equation, I know I is used, but in an equation it might be a lowercase I, INF, and an uppercase INF, or whatever it might be, or to use numbers, or then maybe there's a little uppercase, lowercase on the infinity. I don't know. But anyways, these are thoughts. It's Thoughtful Thursday. So the idea here is, going back a little bit, so within the realm of infinity, it makes sense of this cycle of something from nothing. And maybe nothing lasts literally for infinity until a new cycle within that infinity takes place, and then we have something again. It would make sense that we have a constant in the form of a space for which any of this could possibly take place. It's kind of beyond description. I mean, nothing, but still, no, even that. The space contains nothing. What is the space itself? Because something can happen within that space and it is no longer nothing. It is something. So, within this something, and we have this cycle, but we have an existence. One thing we're 100% aware of is that if you exist in any way, shape, or form, if you have any awareness of your existence, I think that it's not just humans. I'm not talking about conscious self-awareness and contemplate the universe awareness. I'm talking about that you need to do the things you need to do to be alive, whether you have cells in your body that are working to produce the things you need to be alive, or you will, or you are specifically a larger organism than a single-celled organism or whatnot, and going out and doing the things you have to do to survive, or staying exactly where you are and doing the things you have to do to survive, depending on what kind of life you are. Create, the chemicals for which photosynthesis can happen, so on and so forth, so on and so forth. If you are any of those things, you are an entity that is connected to life. You are aware of your existence. You work to live. You fight to survive. You strive to replicate yourself and create more of what you are. So let's go to the idea of evolution. That's how we started this. So we have something from nothing. What happens now? Does that something remain? Just a solid something? No, whatever willed something to be from nothing decided, and or it was completely necessary, it's just a reaction beyond decision, that the something moved. That when you make this something, it's not just going to stay one grain of sand staying in one place, floating in this giant space. Somehow, whatever it is that's created follows a kinesis of the creation. So perhaps it is a constant. And maybe the kinesis of the creation can be almost near non-moving, almost as still as could possibly be. But nonetheless, if anything is going to come from that nothing, you make the smallest, tiniest little stroke with the least amount of motion or contact whatsoever. It is something. And that something moves. That momentum has a kinesis. There is kinesis. Things are moving, however slow, however fast, perhaps gaining momentum, connecting with other things, frictions happening. So there's that. Each thing has an energy, or can never feel rounded by an energy. Its own little kinesis, something from nothing, and it starts to bond and or repel from other kinesises. Gaining in strength or weakening, and then creating units. Cults, if you will. Gangs. That are the assemblances of the smallest particles of life. I'm no scientist, but I would think that an atom is one of the larger of them. But the thing is sometimes these groups will get together. And they keep moving. There's a kinesis. The kinesis doesn't seem to ever stop. If something happens from nothing, then it needs to keep going. Until there is once again nothing. So we have a continued kinesis in our known universe. And then we have the stuff of stars, and then we have stars themselves. And then we have the stuff of stars again, and then we have the stuff that comes from the death of stars. From the violent, reactive, cosmic explosions of dying stars. Nearly every single element that we have, that we are physically composed of, that we know of. And again, I'm not a scientist. Essentially comes from a supernova. We have hydrogen, that's all that exists, and then hydrogen turns into stars, and then it builds into helium and maybe other things, and then when the stars, because things are happening through fusion, and then when the fission happens is I think when you get gold, you get some of the rarer elements of the unit of us that we're made of, that our Earth has. Think that we have the elements we have, that we could look at certain rocks and see gems or see gold and certain elements and minerals and these beautiful strains of things that are so valuable to us. And if a star had not exploded, quite possibly taking out other stars and or solar systems in their wake. We wouldn't have we would have pretty much none of the elements, or fair few less at the least of the elements that we have that make up everything we know. So within this something from nothing, this creation, in order to keep things moving and changing, everything needs to at some point go away and become something else. It's a constant. And in that constant, you are connected to the thing that is always there, that will to have something from nothing. And I believe that the will doesn't go away. God is there. And when you think about this, I'm going to try to take God away from religion here and look at it more scientifically even. You have this momentum, this kinesis, this spark that started this something from nothing. And all these other something from nothings perhaps that happened from there. And if there is a continued flow of this, a continued kinesis, whether or not the act of the kinesis is still present, that moment, that whatever it was that made the kinesis happen, the energy of that kinesis, that moment is still present, and therefore the Creator is present. If you look at a work of Rembrandt, Rembrandt is alive in front of your eyes. If you listen to the work of Beethoven, he's alive in front of your ears. If you live in the realm of something from nothing, then the will of that something is here in front of you and all around you. Are the stars we see in the sky, some of them not there because literally they don't exist anymore except for what we're seeing of them, but their actual pulsating, vibrant existence that was them as a singularity is gone? They exist. They're still there. We see them in the sky. There and not there. Something and nothing. And so, we have planets forming and we have all these things. We have this small little solar system, the modest sun. In this modest galaxy. Beautiful spiral galaxy, and for whatever reason, life is spinning around the sun, and the sun with its own force of gravity of its own existence, its own kinesis. Some of the dust and the other particles and the other small gangs, small cults of molecules and atoms coming together to create planets. Likely, if not definitely, of a very different sort than we have floating around our sun today. If it wasn't perhaps for the collision and destruction and chaos of a number of those planets, we wouldn't have settled into the composition and flow that we have now, from which we as life exist. Or perhaps there was life before, and because of the explosions and all this and the collisions, enough landed on this unlikely little crater, on this unlikely little asteroid that ended up floating around the sun. And actually no, it We have a core and a center. We grew. But maybe if it wasn't for those collisions, we wouldn't have the stuff of life. For whatever reason we do, and like everything else in life, there's something from nothing that seems to keep a kinesis, so life needs to keep a kinesis. Now life, as we know it, has a very interesting kind of kinesis because it's a self-perpetuating physical kinesis to go along with the kinesis of its existence as an individual entity, which is to say, stars reproduce by exploding and dying and putting their stuff out there so that the elements can reconnect and reconfigure and other stars can come of it, more or less, I think. But life, as we know it, as we call it, will proliferate itself, make more of itself, perpetuate its existence beyond its death while it is still alive. Very interesting. And so, because life does not have to wait for death to continue its life, now that we have life as we know it, the kinesis naturally will lead it to find ways to continue to replicate itself. And now we have evolution. We've come to it at last, ladies and gentlemen. Prokaryotes, eukaryotes, and everyone else. All with love in my heart, I say unto each of ye, it is this evolutionary need, this kinesis, this continued kinesis of existence that life takes into its own hands. More or less, you see, life energy could have easily designed itself to be one thing that adapts to the change and flow of the cosmic go. But instead, it chose to make as many kinds of itself as you could possibly imagine, with limitless possibilities. Limitless. So because life now does not have to wait to die to live again, it essentially has the ability, privilege, if you will, to mess around with itself, to allow for accident and serendipity. Why is it necessary? Why? I can see why a comet might collide with another one. I can see how there may be things like that happened, or planets and things. Sure. 1 in 6 zillion chances of something hitting something can certainly happen. In fact, it will eventually happen if you give it enough time and circumstance. However, we're talking about something else here. We are talking about the necessity for serendipity, the necessity for accident, the necessity for something to not continue as programmed, to be different. In order for life to proliferate itself into as many imaginable forms as possible. So now evolution is not just the growth of life, it is the conscious connection to the importance of change, the importance of going against the grain of a system in order to create a new system. Evolution isn't about man coming from monkeys. Evolution is about the energy needed, necessary to proliferate, never-ending variatorious, I don't know if that's a word exactly, huge amount of infinite varieties of life. DNA could, in theory, it could always put out the same thing. Is there any reason it would make mistakes? You can look at the mechanics of it. I don't know, I'm not a scientist. Whatever it is, that the proteins or whatever it is, the element, the chemicals that compose the bare bones of DNA. Might be affected in certain ways, do certain things that would have caused this change, but why would that happen? Why do they need to break down? Why does there need to be confusion? Because life requires it. It requires us to make sense of these changes, to find harmony in the contrast, composition in the accident. And because of this energy, this conscious energy, God bless you, Carl Sagan. God bless you. Am I wearing a Carl Sagan t-shirt? I am not, but I have several Carl Sagan t-shirts. My beautiful partner has given me over the years. And I absolutely, he means a lot to me, and I think he means a lot to all of us, whether we know it or not. But despite any potential controversies or conspiracy theories I won't go into, but there was something to think that science needs to deny the conscious activity of evolution by only seeing the randomness. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Even if it takes a zillion tries to get something right, when it does and it moves and it changes to the things that have led us to where we are. How could that be random? It can be accidental, serendipitous, but not without purpose, not without a connection to the will of the something from nothing. A will for life to change. For something to be different. Now I was brought up in a very, very Catholic environment. My parents now are both very, very, very Christian, although I think they identify more with other types of Christianity than Catholicism, especially my father. Grew up with all of that. I get a lot of it. The core reasons that Christianity exists is because of evolution. The evolution of thought, the change, the conscious, active change. Enough serendipitous accidents, moments, and just a little bit of a push, a lightning bolt, if you will. And the kinesis takes another form. Unfortunately, it got corrupted by the institutions of power and the pure beauty of Jesus the revolutionary, Jesus the hippie, Jesus the dude who hung out with the alienated and the diseased and the disenfranchised, who yelled at the government, who called out the corruption of the institutionalized faiths, told people to be simple, man, chill, love each other, treat yourselves well, stop, calm down, man. Follow these ideas, you'll connect to the light. Continue to try to destroy and eat each other, you connect to the dark. It's It's physics. It's science. It's not hard. It's not that complicated. And so they took all of that and they embodied these beautiful, 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 truthful messages of how we can exist and evolve as life forms in the larger consciousness, even beyond our deaths. And basically, Frankenstein monstered this poor individual and or group of individuals. Who's to say that all the things that we attribute to Jesus were down to one person or man? But they Frankenstein monstered this message into something that has brought upon some of the most atrocious and abysmal choices of consciousness that can be imagined. And if we are going to have evolution, we need to reevaluate all of that. There needs to be no rift between spirit and science. There need not be religion for people to connect to God. There need not be a dissension of my God, your God, female God, male God. No, let's just all agree that this infinity was a spark of something out of nothing at some point, and the will for that to be, and therefore you and me, is God. There's no evocation of anything there. There's no patriarchy. There's no bending your will towards one way or the other. There's no adherence if you're grateful to be alive and you realize that you are a connection of the conscious persistence of life for something to be. There's your spirituality, there's your connection, and then it can get deeper and interpreted and all this. But we all live in this universe. We all are a part of this infinity. And when you take a message of peace and harmony and coming together to understand and comprehend that, and turn it into the most us against them, destroy knowledge, destroy people, control freak fucking bullshit that the world has ever seen, well, you are doing something to evolution consciously to destroy it. You are willfully devolving, sabotaging life, sabotaging existence, trying to control the uncontrollable. There is no question of evolution. You evolved. So did I. And we may have all of the mechanisms wrong. We may realize that we didn't come directly from monkeys, but actually talking mushroom creatures that mated with aliens from another dimension. And they made it look like we came from monkeys, or they didn't want us to know the real truth. It doesn't matter, some way, shape, or form. However we came to be in this existence, we evolved. Evolution cannot be defined by a particular changing of DNA. Evolution is deeper than that. DNA is one of the things with which the mechanism can be seen, which the energy can be worked through, but it is not what evolution is about. It is not. You do not need DNA to have evolution. In fact, I think it's older than gravity. I do not think that it needs to involve just the type of life that we think is life, self-perpetuating life. I think space itself and circumstance are alive, thriving with the cells of possibility. Evolution exists in ideas. Evolution exists beyond light. am an agent of evolution. As an artist, I have found my place there. As an agent of evolution, I have found my place as an artist, because art is one of the great conscious connections to evolution that we have. And it shows some of the great mysteries, perhaps even paradoxes of evolution. Do you realize that we have a great, art? One of the real big moments of art evolution can be seen in modernism and abstraction. There's an enormous difference between a Monet and a Da Vinci. But if you then put a Mondrian or a Pollock next to either of those, or even a Picasso, you're going to put the Monet and the Da Vinci together in more of a similar category, perhaps. Certainly a Rembrandt and a Da Vinci, you might not even notice the difference next to a Mondrian. Well, I shouldn't say that. You would. It's there. It's very clear. But, again, the point is that the contrast of the abstraction and the abstract approach to art making, the evolution of abstraction, the evolution of art making to abstraction, I should say, is a very stark changing point in our perception of reality. And here's the beauty of it. This is some of the great beauty of this, is that the evolution of art and our consciousness needed to be connected with one of the early and solid pillars of the evolutionary chain of art, as found in the art of Africa and Oceania and the Americas to a degree as well. Basically, colonialism, mass world travel and colonialism led to the Western eyes seeing the great abstract, figurative, and expressive art, interactive and nature-connected art of these people that they subjugated and enslaved in most cases, or destroyed. Fucking in the name of God, Jesus. My heart goes out to you. My heart goes out to the people who believe. Well, my heart goes out to the people who, of course, who were subjugated and whose ancestors still have to live in the shackles of that subjugation, or under the cloud of that subjugation. In some cases, literally, the shackles of it. But my heart goes out to the Christians and the souls of the Christians who thought that being Christian meant enslaving, destroying, and torturing other people. I feel for the suffering of what it takes to be that. I feel for the suffering of that hypocrisy, and I pray that we all can see the light someday, that we all can learn to forgive. Forgiveness is another beautiful element of things, and I think an agent of evolution. The evolution of consciousness, because what it does, forgiveness, compassion, these elements that help us to keep life sacred and keep ourselves healthy and together and whole, rather than just looking at the individual or the individual cults and tribes and species and so on that go on that not only for each other, starting with the individual, but rather to see the whole picture. And I think that gravity of energy is very, very important in evolution. Forgiveness is a big part of that. But what does it take to just say, I forgive you, yeah, all right, everything's fine, let's just go back to things the way they are, or were, is not real forgiveness. I think that forgiveness is perhaps an active process. One of the things that the Bible might have kind of right in a way, perhaps, is the idea that forgiveness is something sought, but it's always something that you get. If if you seek it, something like that. And if actions speak louder than words, then when we ask forgiveness, it should be with our actions and not just our words. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I'm going to go out and do it again. That is not how it works. We need to stop burning people at the proverbial stake. It still happens. Today, my partner was harassed by an elderly gentleman about her wearing a face mask. Apparently he said something like, "Lose the mask." She was in a public place. The people working behind the counter were wearing masks. Courtesy of caution in these troubled times. I wasn't with her. She ignored it and took the high ground and all that. I would not have. I'm glad I wasn't with her, I guess. Point is, I would want to, but I would want to try to engage in a positive way, which can be difficult sometimes. Point is that is the attitude that burns people at the stake. What he proverbially did was burn her at the stake for wearing a face mask. That's the energy. That's where it leads. And it does not, it goes both ways. Giordano Bruno. Giordano Bruno. So, to wrap up the words parts of this, evolution is beautiful. It is incredible. Diversity of existence is so beautiful. The diversity of self-perpetuating existence is beyond amazing. It's incredible magic. It's incredible stuff. Something from nothing, and the necessary kinesis for it to continue to grow and evolve and change within the realms of the infinite possibilities that it exists in. And that's what I think we need to work on. Let us not fight and quibble over science versus spirit, or evolution being an idea any longer. It is an idea as much as gravity is, as much as light is. There are people who adamantly believe the earth was flat. I'm not talking about today or now. People who like cults to Cabbage Patch Kids, and it's crazy. Anyways, flat earthers, not the point. There was a time when almost everybody was a flat earther. But we're reasonably sure that that's not the case because of the way that we, traveled around the globe. Billion other things. Most people believe the earth was flat. Now most people don't. Most of those people believe that because of their Bible and their God and their religion, the earth had to be flat and it had to be the center of the universe, but it is not. And their religion and their God still exist. So why not accept the truth of evolution? Why does it have to be so hard? And science people, why don't you accept the truth of the creation of something from nothing, of the great spiritual, metaphysical, conscious existence of our reality? One of my favorite scenes from this movie, well, I really enjoyed that Doctor Strange movie they made for what it was. Saw it a few times, and the last time I saw it, I think it was like, well, it's definitely worn off the initial interest and starting to see its flaws. But the point is, Mr. Smarty Pants, one of the smartest people on earth, highly recommended brain surgeon, celebrity, blah blah blah, Mr. Smarty Pants, Dr. Strange, says to Guru, awesome Guru lady, I forget her name, such an Tilda, awesome actress. Forgive me for not knowing her name. Great character. But he says we are something to the effect of we are just bits of dust or whatever floating around in an uncaring universe. And that is it. Something like that. Completely denying any type of conscious connection to anything beyond just, dust floating around, no purpose, no meaning to anything. Mr. Smarty Pants. And he gets taken to SCHOOL and gets burned into a warp tunnel, super trip, cosmic joyride, not exactly joyride, through multiple dimensions in the omniverse. It's one of the realest things I'd seen in any of those comic book movies. Any of them. Do all of you sciencey, smarty people need to have that same experience? Perhaps. There are ways you don't need Tilda, the awesome actress, to warp you into that state of consciousness. There are ways. But trust. Even if you can't trust the details beyond your own perception, how can you deny and stop trusting the existence of possibility as a dimension in time-space? Perhaps beyond time-space. Therefore must, by the logical inclusion of possibility, allow for the existence of the great conscious compositional reality of our existence, something from nothing. So, there's a few thoughts for you there. Let's evolve, people. Let's learn and grow. There's a number of forms of that evolution can take. But I'm going to save this. Perhaps next Thursday, we're going to talk about the evolution of humans and what that might mean. There's several branches that will likely go, including with robots. So on that note, I'm going to jam for a little bit, and then we will bid you adieu. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Tomorrow we'll be back for Feel Free Friday. This is Art for Truth. We are Art for Truth, and we thank you all very, very much for your ear and your time.